"Step out of the car, boy. You do not belong behind that wheel." The officer's voice cracked like a whip across the luxury strip of Ashton Drive, loud enough for every passerby to hear. Heads turned, phones lifted. The orange sports car gleamed beneath the sun, but all eyes were fixed on the black man in the driver's seat. He did not flinch. He did not move. His hand rested calm on the leather steering wheel, as if it were an extension of his pulse. And in that silence, something dangerous began to build. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here. Now, back to Darius King. The officer jabbed a finger at the tinted window, veins taut in his forearm. His partner hovered close, hand grazing the grip of his holstered weapon. The crowd widened like an open wound, whispers spilling into the air. "Looks stolen," a man muttered near the boutique doors. A woman pulled her child closer, eyes darting at the man in the white blazer, as though wealth on black skin was an impossible sight. Darius lowered the window with unhurried grace. His sunglasses caught the reflection of the badge pressed inches from his face. "What exactly makes you think this car is stolen?" he asked, voice level, stripped of any tremor. The officer sneered. "Do not play games with me. Step out now, or I will drag you out." Gasps fluttered through the bystanders. Someone raised a phone higher, the red light blinking like a witness. Yet Darius remained anchored in his seat, his stillness heavier than any weapon. His silence was not weakness. It was patience, sharpening into steel. The officer did not hesitate. He yanked the handle, and the door of the orange sports car swung open with a sharp metallic click. His voice carried over the street like a siren. "Out! Hands where I can see them." His partner shifted, one hand firm on the holster of his sidearm, eyes locked on the man seated calmly behind the wheel. The crowd gasped. A few onlookers whispered in disbelief, their phones already filming every move. Darius King moved deliberately, every gesture controlled. He placed one polished shoe on the pavement, then the other, standing tall in his white blazer. He was unshaken, his breathing steady, his chin lifted. "You have not even checked the plates," he said evenly. "What makes you so certain this car is stolen?" The lead officer stepped close, so close their shoulders nearly brushed. "Because I know who belongs in a car like this, and it is not you." The words fell heavy, dripping with disdain. The crowd's reaction split down the middle. Some nodded in quiet agreement, while others murmured protests, the injustice clear in their voices. One boutique employee leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a smug smile curling at her lips. "I told you," she muttered to a coworker, loud enough for the cameras nearby to catch. "Dressed up or not, you can always tell." The second officer moved behind Darius, snapping a pair of cold steel cuffs around his wrists. The sound echoed like a gavel striking wood. A woman in the crowd shouted, "He is not resisting!" "Why are you treating him like a criminal?" another man added. "At least check the registration. This does not make sense." But sense was not the point. Power was. The first officer shoved Darius against the hood, pressing him down hard until his cheek met the hot metal. A ripple of outrage surged through the gathering. Phones rose higher, recording from every angle. A teenager whispered to her friend, "This is not right. He looks like he owns that car." The officer sneered, tightening his grip. "People like him always say that." The words bled into the air, unmistakable, undeniable. The crowd grew louder, a chorus of disbelief and fury swelling around the man in the white blazer who stood calm even in chains. The officer's hand pressed harder against Darius's back, the weight of authority turned into an instrument of humiliation. The white blazer creased under the strain, but the man inside it did not break. His eyes scanned the glass storefronts lining Ashton Drive, catching the reflections of bystanders frozen between fear and fascination. The silence of a few seconds felt like a courtroom verdict waiting to fall. Then came the sound of shattering. One of the officers pulled open the trunk of the car and tossed items onto the asphalt. A leather briefcase slid, spilling papers across the pavement. A sleek tablet skidded to the curb and cracked, the screen splintering into a web of glass. A young woman gasped, covering her mouth. "That is not procedure," she whispered. "That is destruction." A boy in a baseball cap, no older than 16, lifted his phone higher. "This is live now," he muttered. "People need to see this." The red dot blinked steadily, capturing every insult, every shove, every glance heavy with bias. The lead officer picked up a black card holder that had fallen open, sneering at the gold lettering on the inside. "Looks fake," he scoffed. "Men like you do not carry this kind of credit." He tossed it back onto the pile of scattered belongings. His words dripped with contempt, each syllable cutting as deep as the steel cuffs. From the crowd, a middle-aged black man in a brown jacket finally spoke up, his voice steady but charged. "Check the registration. It has his name on it. You are making a mistake." The officer turned, eyes narrowing. "Stay out of this or you will be next." The warning cut through the air like smoke choking a room. But others were no longer silent. A woman near the boutique doors shouted, "He showed no resistance. You threw him against his own car." Another voice added, "You did not even ask for identification before cuffing him." Murmurs rose, building into a wave. The bystanders were no longer passive. They were witnesses. And yet Darius remained calm, his cheek still pressed against the hood, his voice low but firm. "You are destroying evidence of who I am," he said. "But truth does not burn that easily." His words carried over the hum of the street, searing themselves into the ears of every person within reach. The officer smirked, adjusting the cuffs. "Truth," he said coldly. "Truth is what we write in our report." The statement landed like a slap, exposing the ugly certainty that this was not about justice but control. Phones continued to record. Every frame became a record, every second a stain. And with each insult, the tension wrapped tighter, the moment dragging all who watched into a storm that was only beginning. The metal cuffs dug deeper into Darius's wrists as the officer leaned his weight forward, but the man in white did not raise his voice. His restraint unsettled the crowd even more than if he had shouted. Silence became its own weapon, sharp and deliberate. The second officer circled the car like a predator. He tapped the hood, peered through the windshield, and laughed under his breath. "Luxury like this does not belong to men like him. Bet the plates are fake." He spoke loud enough for everyone to hear, his words not just accusation but declaration. A woman standing near the crosswalk covered her daughter's ears, but it was too late. The words carried like glass shattering, slicing through the growing audience. Phones continued to rise, red lights glowing like dozens of watchful eyes. Darius shifted slightly, raising his head from the hood. His voice, low and unhurried, broke the tension. "Is there a reason you are yelling, or is the noise the only case you have?" The lead officer jerked him back down, face hard with anger. "Do not get clever. You are already guilty by the look of you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. An older man in a business suit whispered, "Did he just say that out loud?" His companion nodded, shaking his head in disbelief. From the boutique doorway, the clerk who had sneered earlier chimed in again, arms folded with casual cruelty. "Told you, he does not belong here. Look at the way he is dressed. Flashy, but not real." Her words carried, echoing the oldest stereotype dressed in modern language. A teenager filming from the corner raised his voice, anger breaking through his fear. "Why are you treating him like a thief? He is not fighting you. He is not running." The officer shot him a glare. "Put that phone away unless you want trouble too." But Darius turned his head slightly, locking eyes with the boy. His tone stayed calm, every word chosen with care. "Do not stop. Record it if you must, or better use your voice. Speak. Let them hear you." The crowd stilled. The boy swallowed hard, then spoke louder this time. "This is wrong. Everyone sees it. You did not even check his name." His voice cracked, but it carried. Others nodded, murmuring agreement. A line had been crossed, and everyone knew it. Darius drew a steady breath, his face pressed to the hood but his words unwavering. "I will not shout. I will not beg. I will not run. I will stand here and let the truth come to me." The air shifted. What began as humiliation was becoming something else. The officers still held him down, but the crowd no longer saw a suspect. They saw a man standing taller in silence than his captors stood with weapons. The balance of power had begun, quietly, to tip. A ripple moved through the onlookers as the weight of the moment sank in. The cuffs clamped tight around Darius's wrists, his cheek pressed against the polished hood, but the man's silence carved deeper than any scream could. The street itself seemed to hold its breath. Then a sound cut through the hush, the click of a camera. A college student in a gray hoodie stepped forward, phone raised high. "Everyone needs to see this," he said, voice trembling but firm. The red recording light burned like a flare in the gathering dusk. The lead officer snapped his head around. Put that down before I charge you with obstruction." His words thundered, but the student did not lower his phone. He glanced at Darius, then back at the officer. "Obstruction of what? He has not done anything." Another witness joined in, a young mother holding a stroller with one hand and her phone in the other. "You dragged him out without a question. You never asked for identification. That is on you, not him." Her voice quivered with outrage, and the baby stirred at the sharpness of her tone. From across the street, an elderly man in a Panama hat raised his voice. "Check the registration before you ruin yourselves. You will find his name on it." He spoke with the clarity of someone who had seen this script play out too many times. His warning hung in the air like thunder before a storm. The second officer scoffed. "Save your lectures, old man. I know exactly what I am looking at." He shoved the scattered documents with his boot, papers fluttering into the gutter. Fraud, plain and simple. But not everyone believed that anymore. The whispers among the crowd turned into words, the words into statements, and the statements into protests. "This is profiling. You cannot do this. He is standing here calm, and you are the ones acting like criminals." Oh. Still pinned, Darius tilted his head just enough to speak clearly. His voice carried like iron wrapped in velvet. "Let them talk. Every word spoken here is a record. Every insult a piece of evidence." The student's camera shook slightly in his hands, but his voice steadied. "He is right. We are all witnesses." Others lifted their phones higher, lenses reflecting the streetlights, transforming the sidewalk into a sea of blinking eyes. The lead officer's face flushed red with anger. He shoved Darius harder, his voice louder than before. "Shut it down, all of you. This is official police business." But it was too late. The scene was no longer theirs to control. The truth had already begun to escape, carried on the voices of strangers who refused to stay silent. And for the first time that afternoon, the officers looked less like enforcers of order, and more like men caught in the very act of injustice they swore to prevent. The tension snapped tighter as the lead officer straightened, his voice cutting through the commotion. "Enough. This man is under arrest for suspicion of grand theft auto." His words echoed off the glass storefronts, as if volume could replace proof. Gasps rose from the crowd. A woman clutching her purse shouted, "Suspicion is not a crime. You have nothing." Her words rang like a gavel, sharp and undeniable. The second officer joined in, his tone colder, sharper. "You think wearing a white blazer and expensive shoes makes you untouchable? I have seen this before. Men like you show up with toys they cannot afford, and then cry victim when they are caught." The insult rippled across the onlookers. Some shook their heads in disgust. Others stepped forward, anger plain in their eyes. The student in the gray hoodie shouted back, "He is not crying victim. He has not even raised his voice." His phone caught every syllable, the lens trembling as if it too felt the weight of the moment. Darius's face pressed against the hood, but his voice was steady, each word carved from steel. "Your suspicion is not truth, and your anger is not authority." The line cut through the noise like a blade, and for a moment even the officers paused. But the silence did not last. The lead officer barked louder, desperation cracking his tone. "Security is on the way. We will drag him in whether you like it or not." He gestured to his partner, who reached for the radio clipped to his shoulder. From the boutique entrance, the clerk smirked, arms folded. "Finally, get him out of here. He is making a scene." Her words carried a poisoned sweetness, a reflection of prejudice disguised as confidence. Then came another voice, unexpected and clear. A young man in a tailored suit, standing near the curb, stepped forward. "I watched him park that car. He unlocked it with a fob. You did not even ask his name." His words carried weight, the kind of weight that comes from witnessing every detail. The officers ignored him, but the crowd did not. Murmurs grew louder, the line between bystanders and participants blurring. "He is telling the truth." They skipped every step. "This is a setup." The second officer shoved the witness back. "Stay out of it, or you will spend the night in a cell with him." The threat landed heavy, but it only fueled the anger. Still pinned, Darius drew another calm breath. "You think chains prove guilt, but they only prove fear." His words struck deeper than the cuffs around his wrists. The crowd shifted, their doubt transforming into resolve. The storm that had been brewing was no longer silent. It was gathering force, and the officers were standing in the center of it. The air grew heavy as the lead officer pulled Darius upright, metal cuffs biting into his wrists. His voice was sharper now, tinged with panic, though he masked it with authority. "Search the vehicle, tear it apart if you have to." The second officer obeyed instantly. He yanked open the glove box, tossing papers into the street. A valet receipt fluttered underfoot, ignored. He grabbed a leather bag from the passenger seat and hurled it onto the pavement. A bystander gasped as a silver laptop clattered against the curb, screen cracking on impact. "That is destruction of property," someone shouted. "You cannot just smash his things." The officer ignored the protest. He dug deeper, pulling out a folder embossed with gold letters. Without a glance, he ripped it in half. The pages scattered across the street like torn dignity. From the crowd, voices rose louder. "Stop! You did not even check the ID. You are humiliating him in front of everyone." But humiliation was the point. The lead officer shoved Darius back against the car, his words spat like venom. "You think this is your world? It is not. This car does not belong to you. This street does not belong to you. And men like you do not belong here." The words fell like a hammer, brutal and unmistakable. Gasps erupted from the onlookers. A woman clutched her chest. A young man shook his head furiously, muttering, "He actually said it," out loud. The second officer held up the cracked laptop, sneering. "Probably stolen, too. Just like the car. Just like the clothes. Just like the card." He let it drop with a heavy thud. Darius winced at the crash, a shallow cut on his forehead, bleeding slowly, the red against his white blazer like an emblem of defiance. Yet his voice remained level. "Break the glass, tear the pages, none of it changes who I am." The student in the hoodie raised his phone higher. "He is right. You are making this worse for yourselves." Others echoed the sentiment. The tide of the crowd was shifting. But the officers did not stop. One of them leaned close, whispering just loud enough for the front row to hear, "Better pray no one believes you, because in our report, you are already guilty." The cruelty was no longer hidden. It was broadcast in daylight, amplified by every recording phone. And as Darius stood chained yet unbroken, the scene shifted from suspicion to spectacle. The line between law and violence blurred until it vanished completely. The humiliation was complete, but the reckoning had only begun. The lead officer leaned close enough that Darius could feel his breath against his ear. "Nobody is coming to save you. You are alone here." His words were not just meant for Darius. They were meant for the crowd, a final attempt to remind everyone who carried the badge and the gun. But Darius's voice, low and precise, carried further than the officer's threats. "Miss Freeman," he said calmly, his eyes fixed on the cracked reflection of the crowd in the hood of the car. "Activate Protocol 1. The command was quiet, but the effect was immediate. Somewhere in the distance, a phone buzzed. A young woman in a Navy business suit, standing across the street, lifted her own device to her ear. She nodded once, her face hardening. "Confirmed," she said into the line. The crowd reacted with confusion. "Who is Freeman?" one man asked. "What does that mean?" another whispered. The officers did not care. The second officer laughed, cruel and dismissive. "Protocol? What is this, a movie? You are a fraud. Stop pretending you have power." Darius did not answer him. His silence cut sharper than words. His gaze shifted instead toward the student filming in the gray hoodie. "Keep recording," he said. "Do not stop until this ends." "Oh." The lead officer yanked him back by the cuffs, shaking with frustration. "You are not giving orders here." His voice cracked under the weight of anger. "I am." And then the police radios crackled. Sharp, urgent voices broke through the static. "All units on Ashton Drive, cease contact. Repeat, cease contact immediately. Subject identified. Hold your positions and await confirmation." The officers froze. The words sliced through their certainty. A ripple moved through the crowd. "Did you hear that?" someone asked. "They just said cease contact." The lead officer's jaw tightened. He reached for the radio on his shoulder, pressing the button hard. "Negative. We have a suspect detained. Evidence of fraud. Standing by for transport." The radio replied, more urgent this time. "Release him. Do not proceed further. That is a direct order." Gasps spread through the gathering. The mother with the stroller leaned forward. "They told him to release him. Why is he still in cuffs?" The second officer's confidence faltered for the first time. His eyes darted to his partner. "What if they are right? What if we grabbed the wrong man?" But the lead officer snarled, clinging to the last threads of control. "Wrong man? Look at him. Look at the car. Do not let the crowd fool you. He does not belong here, and I am not letting him walk away." Yet the crowd was no longer fooled. They were listening, filming, and waiting for the truth to erupt. And for the first time since the cuffs closed, it was clear that the power was slipping from the hands of the officers and shifting back to the man they had tried to erase. The officer's defiance clashed against the command ringing through his radio, but the balance of power had already begun to tilt. The crowd pressed closer, no longer scattered onlookers but a wall of witnesses. Phones hovered high, their lenses unblinking. Every second became evidence, every word a record. Darius straightened as much as the cuffs allowed. His voice was calm, even measured, but it carried with a gravity that made silence fall across Ashton Drive. You dragged me from my own car, you broke my belongings, and you did it without asking one question. He paused, letting the weight of his words hang in the humid air. Now you will learn who I am. The lead officer barked a laugh, forced and hollow. Do not play this game. You are nothing but a thief with a story. Oh, but before he could continue, the woman in the navy suit stepped into the circle, phone still in hand. Her heels struck the pavement like a gavel. She spoke with steady precision. His name is Darius King, Chief Executive Officer of Revoc Motors. The car you cuffed him against is the prototype he designed. The crowd erupted, gasps colliding with shouts. What? Did she just say CEO? That is his car? The student in the hoodie swung his phone toward the woman, capturing every word. The second officer blinked, his certainty unraveling. That cannot be true. His voice lacked the venom it carried before. The woman did not flinch. She held up her screen, displaying a corporate profile, news articles, and a photo of Darius standing beside the very same orange sports car. You humiliated a man for driving the machine he built? The lead officer's face drained of color, but his pride would not release him. Anyone could fake that, he growled. Anyone could print a story and put it online. But the voices of the crowd grew louder, angrier, undeniable. He told you. He warned you. This is racial profiling. You cuffed the man who owns the car. Darius lifted his head, his eyes locked on the officer who still gripped his arm. His voice came slow, deliberate, and final. You called me a thief, in front of the car I created. That was your last mistake. The words did not need volume. They carried their own power, and the effect was immediate. The officer's hand trembled, his authority crumbling under the weight of truth. The crowd, once fractured, now moved as one. They were not merely bystanders anymore. They were jurors, recording every detail of the moment when humiliation turned into revelation. And for the officers who had written their report in arrogance, the real story had just begun to write itself. The revelation detonated through the crowd like a shockwave. People who had been whispering now shouted openly, "That is his car. You cuffed a CEO." The street no longer hummed with quiet disbelief. It roared with outrage. The second officer's eyes darted to the woman in the navy suit, then to the glowing screens capturing his every movement. His grip on Darius faltered, the certainty in his posture slipping away. We should verify this," he muttered, voice shaking. But the lead officer, his pride bleeding into rage, barked back. "No, he is lying. They are all lying." He yanked Darius forward, holding him by the cuffs as though force alone could reverse the truth already spilling into daylight. Gasps erupted again. The student in the gray hoodie shouted above the noise, "Let him go. You heard the radio. They told you to release him." His voice cracked, but it carried like a verdict read aloud. A woman with silver hair stepped to the front of the crowd, her phone raised steady despite her trembling hand. "I saw the proof," she declared. "That man is Darius King. You are destroying yourselves with every second you hold him." Phones tilted closer, capturing the officer's face, sweat beading on his forehead. The cracks in his authority widened, visible to all. The weight of the crowd pressed heavy, but his arrogance clung like armor. "Do not tell me who he is," he hissed. "I decide who belongs here." The words fell flat, lifeless against the rising tide of voices. From the boutique doorway, the clerk who had mocked Darius earlier took a cautious step back. Her smirk was gone. The poisoned confidence had drained, replaced with unease as the narrative shifted. Darius stood taller now, the chains on his wrists no longer symbols of weakness but evidence of injustice. His eyes swept the gathering, pausing on each witness. "You see it clearly," he said, his tone calm, unwavering. "This is not about a stolen car. This is about stolen dignity." "Oh." The crowd responded with a swell of agreement. "Yes, that is right. We are all watching." The words rolled like thunder, each shout eroding what little authority the officers had left. The second officer stepped back, uncertainty painted across his face. He looked at his partner, searching for direction, but found only desperation. The lead officer's jaw was locked tight, his pride collapsing under the weight of truth he could no longer suppress. And still, the cameras did not waver. Every blink, every tremor, every syllable was etched into permanent record. The humiliation that began with handcuffs had transformed into a public reckoning. The stage was set, and the crowd waited. They wanted justice, not whispered promises. They wanted consequence, not excuses. And in the center of Ashton Drive, Darius King was about to deliver it. The crowd surged forward, their voices now a single force, heavy with demand. "Release him! Uncuff him now!" The chorus thundered across Ashton Drive, echoing against the glass walls of boutiques and restaurants. The city itself seemed to bear witness. The lead officer's face was pale, his hand still clamped on Darius's arm. His lips moved, but no sound came. His authority was slipping through his fingers like sand. The second officer stepped back entirely, his radio pressed tight to his ear, desperation flashing across his eyes. And then the police chief arrived. A tall man in a dark uniform pushed through the crowd, his badge gleaming beneath the late afternoon sunday. His expression was tight, his tone clipped. "What is going on here?" he barked. The lead officer seized the moment like a lifeline. "Chief, we caught this man driving a stolen vehicle." He resisted. "We are processing him now." His voice carried false certainty, a brittle edge of confidence that fooled no one. The woman in the navy suit stepped forward, her voice ringing out clear and unwavering. "That is a lie. This man is Darius King, Chief Executive Officer of Revoc Motors. That car is his prototype. You are humiliating him in front of witnesses, in front of the world." Dozens of phones tilted toward the chief, capturing every flicker of his reaction. His jaw tightened as the evidence surrounded him, a storm of screens raised high. He turned toward Darius, his eyes narrowing. "Is this true?" Darius's reply was calm, almost cold. "You should already know who I am. Check your own system. My company's contracts sit in your city's budget. My taxes fund the very uniforms you wear." The crowd erupted in applause and shouts. "Tell him! That is power!" The force of their voices rattled the fragile shield of authority still clinging to the officers. The chief's radio crackled, loud enough for all to hear. Confirming, subject is Darius King, owner of Revoc Motors. Direct order. Release him immediately. The chief froze, his authority struck clean from under him, his officers' faces drained of color. The lead officer stammered, "Chief, we were only following—" But the chief cut him off with a sharp glare. "Enough." His voice cracked like a gavel, final and unyielding. Darius straightened his shoulders, his cuffed wrists rising between them like an indictment. His voice carried the weight of verdict. "You have one chance. Fire them. Here, now, or the badge you wear will be the next to fall." The crowd fell into silence, waiting. Every phone hovered higher. The chief looked at the men who had mocked, shoved, and chained a man they never bothered to recognize. His decision would not be made in secret. It would be made in front of the world. And with every second that passed, the demand for justice grew louder, heavier, and unstoppable. The silence on Ashton Drive was unbearable, broken only by the rustle of phones capturing every breath. The chief's face was rigid, his jaw clenched, but the weight of the moment was crushing. He glanced at the officers who had dragged Darius from his car, their eyes wide, their pride gone. Then he exhaled sharply and spoke the words that shattered their careers. "Effective immediately, you are relieved of duty. Hand over your badges." The crowd erupted. Gasps, cheers, and applause collided in a storm of noise. The lead officer froze, his mouth opening in disbelief. "Chief, you cannot—" But the chief cut him off. "Now." His voice cracked like thunder. The two officers fumbled at their chests, ripping the badges from their uniforms. Their hands shook as they placed the emblems into the chief's palm, the metallic clang echoing louder than any gavel. Darius stood taller, the cuffs still biting into his wrists. His voice carried calm authority, sharper than any shout. "Unlock them." The chief gestured, and a trembling hand reached forward with the key. The cuffs clicked open, falling away like broken shackles. Darius rubbed his wrists once, then lifted his head high. For the first time, he looked not like a man under suspicion, but like a man presiding over his own courtroom. The student in the gray hoodie whispered into his phone's microphone, "They freed him. They actually freed him. His live stream comments flooded with disbelief and awe. Darius turned slowly, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, then back to the chief. You thought you could erase me with noise, with steel, with lies. But the truth does not bend. Not to rage, not to arrogance, not to fear. The chief shifted uneasily, the weight of every camera trained on him. Darius stepped closer, his words deliberate, final. You work for a city my company funds. You enforce laws in a district my taxes sustain. You wear badges paid for by the roads I built. He paused, his eyes unblinking. Never forget who owns the ground beneath your feet. The crowd roared. Some cheered, some wept, some raised fists high. The boutique clerk who had sneered earlier slunk back inside, her face drained of color. Witnesses who had doubted were now believers, their lenses capturing not humiliation but vindication. Darius walked back to the orange sports car, its hood still marked by his struggle, its trunk still littered with torn papers. He opened the driver's door, his movements calm, deliberate. Before stepping inside, he turned back once more, his voice a blade that cut through the chaos. They saw black and forgot who paved the road. Let this be the last time anyone forgets. He slid into the seat, the engine roaring alive, a beast awakened. The car surged forward, leaving behind the wreckage of pride, the end of 2 careers, and the echo of justice carved into the heart of Ashton Drive. Phones lowered slowly. The street returned to silence. But no one present would ever forget what they had witnessed because justice had not whispered. It had roared.